Alright guys, so if you are watching this video, it's because you're stuck on a question that is shown in the folder 6.4. So there's a few different types of questions in this folder, and they're really good questions. The first one I want to point out to you, actually a vocabulary term, and it's the word multiplicative. And multiplicative, and there you go. Woo! Multiplicative, it looks like the word multiply. That means multiplicative relationships are when you do something to the starting number or the starting information, and that something specifically means when you multiply or divide that starting information to change it into something else. So we saw things like our tables, our XY tables, our dependent independent variables, and you do something to X to our X values to get to Y. In this case, if you multiplied or divided your X by something to get to Y, it would be considered multiplicative. It is additive. It's an additive relationship if you add or subtract, and I put commas, to your X. So if you add something to your X or subtract something to your X to get your Y, that's going to be an additive relationship. You also use these words interchangeably whenever you're looking at a graph. And so when I mean graph, when you're looking at your coordinate grid, and coordinate grids are later on where we really talk about them. But just remember, when you're looking at a coordinate grid and there's points plotted, and let's just say these are the points that are plotted here. It looks like this. It crosses here. Maybe they have a line through it. Maybe they don't. I'm going to draw a line through it. But if it's right here, if it does not cross the origin, and remember, it's been a while since we've really used that vocabulary word as far as having it in problems or anything like that. But if it's not in the origin, that's that center, that's 0, where all the lines cross and meet. That's the origin. If it does not cross in the origin, it is an additive relationship. So if it's anywhere above or below the origin and does not cross the center mark right here where they cross that origin, it is additive. If it does cross, let's just draw another line. I'm just going to pretend like that's straight. Don't judge me. But if it does cross through that origin, it's multiplicative. So this would be a multiplicative relationship, and this one would be an additive, and that was meant to be an A. So just keep that in mind when you're looking at them. Also, remember, when you're building equations based off of a table or a graph, if you have just that coordinate graph right here, go ahead and do your ordered pairs. So I'm just going to do a few ordered pairs real quick. I'm going to pretend like this is one of them, this is the next one, and here's, I guess, the first one. And I'm going to make my own XY table for it. That's the first thing I should always do, so that way I know the points. And I'm going to pretend like this is on top of that origin. So the first one would be 0, 0. The next one would be 1, 1, 1, 1. The next one's going to be 2, 2. So I would look to see what the information is on my table. Then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to find that rule, and we're going to take it back elementary style when we think about that rule. What do you do to X to get to Y? What's happening to X to get to Y? Well, in this case, it's just times 1, and that's meant to be a multiply sign, times 1, and that rule fits in all the spots, times 1. So when I have to build my equation, remember it's X and the rule, and the rule equals Y. That's going to help you build the equation. So if you can find the rule, in our case it's times 1, our equation would be X times 1 equals Y, and that's going to fit each time. So just keep that in mind when you're finding the equation to go with the table, or if it's going with the coordinate grid. Now let me zoom out just a little bit to give myself some more room. Push this to the side just in case you're still looking at it. Okay, so you also have problems where it's asking you to find a ratio. And remember, the ratio is a comparison of two things, so you always have to make sure to write the information. So you have, I know one of them talks about calories and minutes. I don't want to set up that problem for you, but I do want to remind you, because then it asks for hours. Remember, 30 minutes, oops, let me put my pen on. 30 minutes equals half an hour. 30 minutes is half an hour. 60 minutes is 1 hour. And those are things that, by the time you're in 6th grade, you're expected to know. Just keep that in mind. And hopefully that'll help you with that part of the question. Let's see. Oopsie. Let me see if I can move this over. All right. Uh-oh. All right. So there's also where it's asking about percentages and entiles. Remember, percent is out of 100. And if they're telling you 30% of something, 40% of something, it doesn't matter. You're going to need to set up your percent tic-tac-toe. Remember, percent's always out of 100. You have your part, your whole, the number, and then your percent. And you just fill in the information that is given. Now, in these cases, let's pretend I'm given my part and my whole. Maybe it's 3/5. There's a few things you can do. You can quickly bat and ball the information, and I'm going to try to show you that real quick. Remember, multiply what's across from each other, divide by what's left. If you didn't want to bat and ball, and I'm going to just erase that real quick so that way we can use the same problem, you could find a nice little scale factor. In this case, I know because I just know 5 times 20 is 100, so I know I can find a scale factor of times 20, and what I do to one, I have to do to the other times 20. Remember, you might be given the percentage instead, and so maybe you would bat and ball the opposite way. So use that information to help set yourself up. If you have problems where there's fractions and then percents, remember those fractions, the fractions could be set up like this. Fractions are made up of parts and wholes. This is a fraction, part and a whole, and so you can literally do the same thing, part and a whole, and then put it there, and then turn it to 100 to make it a percent, and then bat and ball. So it's really not that difficult. There's some problems where there's some percent, some fractions. Remember, we cannot compare things that are different. So if you need to take a fraction and turn it into percent, which is probably the easiest thing to do, make sure you do that. There's also a question where it's asking to convert. And it's a question that we've seen already probably like 5 times. And we saw it on a review, and we saw it on a quiz, and then a retest, and then we saw it during warm-ups. And it was a question that you guys continuously miss, and it's here on purpose because it's a really good question. And it talks about this question. It's number 12 actually, so draw your attention to it. It talks about these yards that are rushed, and then it asks you for feet. Remember, use your math chart. There are 3 feet in 1 yard, and you're going to have to do a few things first. And let me see if I can move this out of the way just a little bit so that way, whoopsie, so I have some room to write. 3 feet in 1 yard. Remember, we can use things like bigger to smaller. You multiply because you get more. Smaller to bigger, you divide because you're taking them and putting them into groups, so it'll look smaller as far as the number is concerned. So pay attention. I hope you guys remember us going over this question. We've gone over it a few times, but if you don't, remember, go ahead and set up what you do remember, what you can remember. Move on to the next question. Flip that red card, and then we'll be by to help you. Before I move on, remember, percent is out of 100. And so if you're given a grid, and we're going to pretend like this is like a hundreds grid, or maybe it's not, you need to count to see how many total are there. Use things like your arrays. You guys know you can set up an array, and I'm just going to pretend like it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 here, and 1, 2, 3, 4 here. So 5 times 4 is 20, so it's out of 20. And then I would have to turn it into 100 if it's looking for percent. I am just giving you that as a hint, because if it asks you for the difference of the shaded portions and it's asking for it in percents, you need to know the difference. You need to turn them into percents and then subtract, because difference means subtract. All right, do the best you can. Set up that card whenever you need to. Ask your shoulder partner. Don't waste time because this is time to really prepare you for that STAR test. All right, guys. So 6.5 folder. 6.5 folder. We did a question like this on the homework video. So by this point of the week, you probably got it today. I can't remember which day it was, but it doesn't matter. So this one has a lot to do with proportions and proportionality in the relationships within from one to the other. So the first thing I'm going to tell you, remember to hashtag. We're going to hashtag the proportions. So whatever you're comparing, I'm just going to pretend. Maybe money over hours, and I have, I don't know, like $5 for 1 hour. And what if I work 15 hours? How much money would I make? I don't put an M. Remember, you have to check that hashtag. And again, I'm just making this up just so you have a guide. As long as they're together, the 1 and the 5 stays together, the M and the 15, the 1 and the 15, and the M and the 5. If they stay together, that means it makes the hashtag. Remember, hashtags look like this. If you get a hashtag, it's great. If for some reason it's set up incorrectly, like, for example, what if it said 5 over M, I don't know, and then 1 and 15. So if I start hashtagging it, and again, I'm just trying to make it up, don't judge me. If I start hashtagging, excuse me, it and that 1 and 5, I can see that they're already crossing it out, and so this wouldn't be proportional. It wouldn't set up because they're supposed to stay together based on my original. So write out what is asked from you in the question. Then from that question, after you've written out, check the hashtags. Do your own hashtag like I just did, and check it with your answer choices. Let's see. Equivalent rates. Remember, they go from one to the other. You have a couple questions that we've seen before. Check to see maybe what it is for 1 hour. Take it down to that unit rate. So remember, unit rate is let's see. I'm going to just do money over hour again. I'm sorry. I'm just kind of thinking off the top of my head. And let's just say I got $10 for 2 hours. And if I want to know how much for 1 hour, I'm going to divide it. Remember, same thing like numerator over denominator, which means the numerator is going to go on the inside, denominator on the outside. In your answer, that's going to be here, your quotient. This one right here would be substituted in as the rate per hour. So in this case, it would turn into, and I'm going to draw an arrow here, so sorry guys, it's a little cluttered. If I take 10 and divide it by 2, it's going to be $5 for 1 hour. So that would be my unit rate, and then I can check it by going to different rates. You can set them up to see if you can bat and ball and get the correct answer. Any of that's okay. There's some proportion questions again in here. I'm sorry, percent questions is what I meant to say. Make sure that you set up your hashtag, your percent tic-tac-toe, whatever you want to call it, with the pound, the percent. Percent's always out of 100, and we always talk about that part and that whole. So make sure you set that up in order for you to get assistance. You also might want to do the one table to extend your information. Just if you don't see things like this the way I wrote it, you can do the words original new. It's the same thing, I promise you. And then write out the words that are there and given to you. Let's see. Oh, those not questions. Make sure you pay attention to not questions. If it's asking for the not, you need to find the not. 9 times out of 10, people pick the yes answer, the true answer, and it's really asking you for the false answer. So there's a few like that. Let's see. Oh, if it turns in from a, let me zoom out a little bit. If it turns from a percent to a fraction, remember if it goes from a percentage to a fraction, a numerator over denominator. Remember, percent is the number over 100, and then So literally whatever your percent is. So for example, if I had 3%, that's the same as 3 over 100, and then I would simplify it. If you're given a picture or a diagram and it says so many are shaded, which fraction is shaded? I know that question 11 says that. So it tells you the percent. Go ahead and take it here. So let's pretend it's 5%. It's not out of 100, and then you would simplify. You say, what number would go into 5 and 100? I know 5 does, so I can take 5s out. I know there's 5 5s, and I'm sorry, one group of 5s in 5. I don't know, I did 2 equal sign. Anyways, and that becomes 1. What I do to one, I have to do to the other. In this 100, that looks like a W. I apologize. 100 divided by 5 is going to end up being 20. If you don't believe me, do the math and find out. So then my fraction that is represented in this pretend problem would be 1/20th. So just take a step back. Think about all the things that I've shared with you. There's not too many hints needed there within the problem and to give you any further information, honestly. You guys know how to do this. Also, if you were checking to see per pound of something, remember that's the unit rate. And remember, unit rate is whenever you divide it. It's just like we did previously in the previous video, and there was an example here taking it down to unit rate. So if you do have one where you're comparing prices, make sure that you take it down to the unit rate, all of them. So if they sell, like example question 4, they have 3 different bags of the almonds, but one sold at £1, one sold at 5 pounds, one sold at 25 pounds, and the prices vary. So you have to take them all to the same poundage. That would be that unit pounds. All right, so put that red card up if you are struggling. Make sure you've already asked a table mate. Make sure you move on to the next question while you're waiting. Don't wait and waste time, because this is your time to be ready for start.